Premier League, many people thought, was more or less over and that Manchester City were going to be runaway winners. It wasn't the view that either myself, John, Giles or Liam Brady subscribed to, because Liverpool had their games in hand and it was possible. At the weekend, I think things changed, and they changed quite dramatically, really. City lost at home to Spurs in an amazing game, a very big game, and Liverpool, of course, beat Norwich, and are now 6 points behind with one game in hand, and they have to play Manchester City at the Etihad. So that means Liverpool's fate, as it were, is in their own hands, and City now have a fight on their hands. And I'm joined by John Giles and Liam Brady to discuss the weekend's games. John, let's start with a game that doesn't involve the top of the table, but does involve, in Manchester United's case, a Champions League place, and in Leeds' case, a relegation struggle they don't want to be involved in. It was an amazing game, John. I thought it was a thrilling game. The pitch was barely playable, in my opinion, because of the heavy rain and snow that had fallen the day before. And I thought Leeds were brilliant. You'd have to admire how game and gallant they were, how they're dealing with the loss of Patrick Bamford, who's a goal scorer, Phillips in midfield, who's the resident sitting England international and a good defensive player, which they desperately need. They really were amazing. United got out of it in the end with a win. But I know you were watching it. I know you were excited because you told me, and you were on the edge of your seat, which doesn't happen very often.
No, it's the way Leeds play, Eamon. They get you on the edge of your seat because of what they do and the way that they try to do it. You know, like as you said, they've got a couple of players missing, but I mean the effort they made against Manchester United was. Bielsa, typically, doesn't sit back, doesn't have complicated situations when they're playing against anybody. It's when they have the ball, they're going to go forward as much as they can. The biggest thing they lack, Eamon, and it's a big thing, and I can't understand it with Bielsa, is the lack of discipline for set pieces.
Yes, they've conceded
I've been going on about this for a long time. I mean, if you look at the goal with Maguire, I think it was Llorente. Was like they don't mark the players. They're pulling and pushing and what happens when Maguire, for example, gets loose and the player's got a free header. Yeah. And it happens time after time. But the actual attitude in the general play is very good. Yes. And United responded well in late on in the game to get the win that they got. Amen.
Yeah. Liam, Bielsa is doing an incredible job. They attack with abandon. They're very naive at the back, though, Liam, aren't they? And they're very naive. And that naivety cost them yesterday. United were able to play through them. Just before you answer or give us your view of the game, Liam, did you think that pitch was really playable?
Yeah, I think it was, Eamon. Yeah. You know, the fact that they produced the football they did, I think, tells you that, you know.
Yes, yeah.
Leeds, the goalkeeper is a big weakness for him, Meslier. Yeah. I thought he was at fault for Fred's goal. That was a big goal in the game. Bashing it past him near post. I know he hit it really, really well, but you should have your near post covered and make the man go across you. You know,
yes.
Make the striker who's ever shooting go across you. But he's let him drill it in at the near post, and that was a big goal after the comeback that Leeds had made.
Yeah,
they are a very exciting team, but unless they tighten up defensively and as John and yourself were just saying, improve at set pieces. With the other teams winning at the bottom, everything is happening in the Premiership this year, Eamon. The relegation is tight. It could come down to the wire between Liverpool and Man City at the very top, who's going to win it, and the fourth position is up for grabs. But going back to Leeds and Man United, Man United were a big chance of getting fourth. They've had a couple of wins now, but Leeds could get dragged into it if they're not careful.
Yeah, John, Manchester United, I thought one thing stood out. This young lad, Jadon Sancho, he's been there. They brought him in the summer, cost a lot of money, didn't put him in the side. Then put him in the side, then subbed him, didn't put him in the side again. In the last 3 or 4 games he started, He looks a really good player. He made 2 assists yesterday, one for the Fred goal that Liam was talking about, John. Like for a guy who's, a winger and a dribbler, he looks up, picked out passes. I think he's a very good player and could be a real player.
Yeah, there's no doubt, Eamon. He's young enough. I think if he came to a club that were as well into the season and playing in a certain way, rather than Manchester United. Manchester United's gone there, Eamon, at a bad time, really, for a young fella coming into the team. There's a lot of changes, lots of stuff going on at Manchester United, and it's difficult for a lad to settle in at the best of times. He definitely has the ability to do it. There's no doubt. It's just getting everything organised at Manchester United to get the best out of him, which is not really there at the moment. He looks a very, very, very promising player. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I want to run this past both you and Liam. Liam, I'll start with you. Story emerged last week about Ralph Rangnick, the interim manager who's going to be director of football. And it was about his first week at Manchester United. And the players were in the canteen at lunchtime and they were queuing for their lunch. And the new interim manager came into the canteen, walked straight past all the players to the top of the queue, got his lunch and walked off to his table. Apparently, it didn't go down well with the players. What do you make of that, John, Liam? I don't think that's a good way to start off. Do you?
No, well, yeah. It's a surprising question, Eamon, to give me.
Sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot.
Maybe he was really hungry, Eamon.
I put it to John. I don't want to involve you.
I can talk about Sancho. I think he needed time to set. Yes. I think every player needs a bit of time to settle into a team.
Yes.
And John is right. The team's been chopping and changing. It's not been easy for him, but he really has shown his ability over the last few games, and he was tremendous against Leeds.
Yeah, and a willingness, John, to take responsibility. I don't want to ask you the question I asked Liam, John, but nevertheless, there's been so much stuff going on at Manchester United, arguments about the captaincy, leaks from players, and clearly from players and their agents, about rows in the dressing room, and bad stories about this fella Rangnick. Now, that story has the ring of truth about it, but it wouldn't be a great way to start if you're a new interim manager, would it?
No, it's a bit silly, Eamon, but it shows you what's happening at Manchester, or what seems to be happening. It's gossip, Eamon.
Yes.
And gossip is gossip, and there should be better things to talk about at a club than situations like that, and it seems to be that, certain players don't get on with certain players. And again, you go back to the interim manager, Eamon, at a club like Manchester United, in the position they're in, it doesn't work because the managers, and I know I'm repeating myself here, I've said it before, but you have to believe, Eamon, when you're in the club, the manager's there forever, you're there forever. Yeah. This is what you do when there's a team spirit. That's how you build a team spirit. But when he's not there, and there's lots of different personalities at Old Trafford in relation to most of the clubs. You got Maguire's a big name, Ronaldo's a big name, Fernandes is a big name. Look, we don't know what's going on, but if the manager's not in charge of the lot, then you do get this stuff, and then you got gossip coming out, which makes it even worse.
Yeah, and
it's a bad situation to be in.
Yeah, I shouldn't be going over old ground, but that story just appealed to me in a certain kind of perverse way. John, I must put it to you that Leeds are in trouble now, and I don't like to see them in trouble. I mean, we all thought Newcastle were dead and buried. Well, now they're 1 point behind Leeds, and they have picked up, actually. I watched them at West Ham, and they were very impressive. They're not dead and buried, and Leeds now, your old club, which I know you deeply care about still, they could be sucked into it, John, and they've got to go to Anfield on Wednesday night.
They are sucked into it, Eamon.
Yeah.
They are sucked into it now. As you say, they're having a bad run, and the teams that you would have expected to be almost down now are coming out of it. Even Watford won the other day. Yeah. Newcastle are making a change. This is bad news for any team that's in the relegation.
And
Burnley won again.
Burnley got a good result of
Win again. Liam mentioned it there. I mean, at the top of the table, it's fascinating. The middle of the table, it's fascinating. And the relegation, the European places, are fascinating.
Yep.
And what you don't want to be in is Leeds, in a situation where have been dragged into it. Because obviously if you lose matches, you're going to be into it. At one stage, only a few weeks ago, you'd say Burnley are down, Watford are down. You could nearly guarantee
Newcastle.
That's not happening.
Yep.
Newcastle. But it's certainly making it a brilliant season for supporters of any team to say, are we going to go down? Are we going to stay up? Are we going to get into the top four? It's a brilliant way to be, but not when you're in Leeds' position, where they are in danger. No doubt about that. I mean, they haven't got a big panel. They've got two of their best players missing, two or three of the best players missing. So there's no doubt. And if I was a mad Leeds supporter, I'd be really, really worried about it. But I'm not a mad Leeds supporter, Eamon. I'd like to see them do well, but they're definitely in trouble. Definitely in trouble.
Okay, Liam, Arsenal, they have a real chance on paper. They're a point behind Manchester United, and in fact, they're 4 points behind Manchester United, and they've 3 games in hand. They're 2 points behind West Ham. In fact, they're level in points with West Ham, and they've 3 games in hand of West Ham. Arsenal on the face of it, Liam, and they're on the face of it, Liam, they have a serious chance of qualifying for the Champions League. Looking at the Premier League table this morning. Now, at the first game this season, they were away to Brentford, who are a small club in London and always have been, but they've done really well to get in the Premier League. Arsenal lost that match, and it was regarded, wasn't it, as a bad moment and a sign, as it were, of how low Arsenal had sunk. They beat them. They beat Brentford 2-1, but my understanding of the game, from what I've read about it, because I didn't see it, is that Arsenal deserved it and played really well.
Yes, I saw it, Eamon. They did play very well. They didn't take their chances, to be quite honest. They would have won 4 or 5-0. Brentford, that's another team that's started the season very well, but now it looks like they're getting dragged into the relegation scene. But Arsenal were very good. The young lads again, we've spoken about them, haven't we? Emile Smith-Rowe got a real good goal. Saka got a smashing goal. Partey's playing much better. The goalkeeper, Ramsdale, looks to be being a good signing, has improved things in that area. And the first 3 games of the season they lost, Eamon, but they had a lot of players out injured and with COVID, and it was a bad time for them. But they've improved dramatically from early on in the season, and I think they showed against Man City a few weeks ago. Remember we spoke about that match when they very nearly beat Man City, and discipline really cost them the game when Xhaka gave a penalty away and Gabriel got sent off. But they're looking good, Eamon. But it's a real fascinating situation, and to pick out who's going to finish 4th out of, what is it? It's about 5 or 6 teams.
Well, I tell
that's a great result for Spurs,
The teams, just to tell you and John, I have the table in front of me. Manchester United, West Ham, Arsenal, Wolves and Spurs all have chances. And Wolves,
absolutely. Yeah. Arsenal play Spurs on Thursday night. I'm going to go to that game.
Wow. Where's that, Liam?
Arsenal play Wolves on Thursday night.
Where?
At the Emirates in London.
Wow, that'd be a hell of a game.
And Arsenal have got to play United. They've got to play Spurs. So as John says, it's for any fan this season, it's very, very interesting.
It's fascinating, and I know John does, and I assume you do, Liam. When the international weeks come, I actually miss the Premier League badly, and we all, I know, are passion for the game and love the game. John, speaking of passion, you rang me yesterday, or I rang you in the middle of the Leeds game, and you were up to 90. You said to me, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat. I've had a few scoops. Come on, you were well into it. But I want to ask you about a game. Sorry to reveal that fact. But let's talk about...
That's okay. I mean, I wasn't too drunk. I was okay.
No, you weren't. You were able to... well, and you certainly don't sound hungover this morning. Now, the Manchester City Spurs game was totally fascinating, John.
Yeah.
Conte, they've lost 3 on the trot, Spurs. They were in with a good shout of a top 4 place. Then it was looking like it was disappearing. You lost 3 on the trot, and you've got to go to Manchester City away from home. Difficult. Conte gave an interview to Sky Italia last week, in which he was very critical of the club. Really implicitly, he said, we're weaker after the transfer window than we were before. This club appears to be more interested in young players for the future than thinking about the here and now, and that didn't clearly suit him. So he was reprimanded by the club. They said he couldn't do any more interviews with Italian media. They go to Manchester City, and I thought they clearly got a fantastic result. And I kind of think the way Harry Kane and Son in particular, but the team played, was very, very good. Very, very good indeed. Yeah. They had a plan to sit deep in the classic Italian manner, to soak up what you're always going to get from City, which is possession and pressure, and to hit them on the break. And it worked.
Oh, yeah, it was a great performance for them, Eamon. But I think he's playing a game.
Yeah, he is.
I think he's playing a game with Levi. Definitely playing a game there, the things he's saying. Because he's saying, well, I didn't realise, but this was the future for the club, the way they see it, which is getting young players and building them up and selling them. So he's playing a game publicly with Levy to put pressure on him, I think, which shouldn't be happening.
No.
You know, when you get a manager in like him, who's a terrific manager, well-proven manager, you should be backing him up and getting the things that he wants to do.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be surprised if this didn't happen in the way that he wants to happen, and they're doing well, as you say. I wouldn't be surprised if he left at the end of the season.
No.
If Levy's not going to do what he sees and knows what needs to be done, I wouldn't be surprised if he left, because he's a terrific manager, and the performance they put up, Eamon, with the players that he has against Manchester City, which we spoke to, a great match it was.
Yes,
great
it
match.
was a great
and
match,
for them to be able to play against Manchester City, this guy's a proven guy, and he should be backed with everything he's got. He shouldn't have to be playing games with Levy as to who's coming in and who's going out. Let him do the job and get the players in that he wants. And then he'd have a real team. Yeah. A real team there.
Yeah, Liam, it was most impressive. You know, from your time in Italy and how Italians prefer to defend, I think. You correct me if I'm wrong. They don't mind sitting deep. They don't mind inviting pressure. And they have bodies there. And in the case of Spurs at the weekend, they had really 9. They had a 5 and a 4, or a 4 and a 5. And when City were passing it, they had to pass across them, in front of them most of the time. And for once, like people like Dyer, the right back Emerson Royale looked a liability, I have to say. But Højbjerg, they all kind of kept their discipline, and it made it really difficult. And then on the break, which is something Harry Kane said after the match, they'd worked on all week. Conte said they'd worked on it, hitting first-time balls on the break. And that was how they scored the first goal. First-time pass from Kane to Son, who was played a really clever pass to Kulusevski, who came from Juventus. Conte brought him in. So it wasn't a fluke. They had a plan.
Yeah, well, Conte would always set up against superior opposition.
Yeah.
By sitting back and hitting teams on the break. But how impressive were they on the break? That was the best Spurs for me have played this season.
Yes.
Harry Kane was back to form. He's had an in and out season. Son hasn't been scoring of late, and Spurs look to have been struggling. And as Conte said, they looked a weaker outfit compared to the people battling for that 4th position after the transfer window, because he wasn't really able to bring in the players he wanted. I think the lad that went to Liverpool, Diaz,
yes.
was set to go to Spurs, and then Liverpool moved in and got him. So he must be frustrated, Conte, with the way things are panning out. But he is a top manager, and that was a top performance. And I'd say Jurgen Klopp and all the Liverpool supporters watching it were well pleased.
Yeah, indeed. And just remind us, Liam, how good Conte's record as a coach is. If I'm not mistaken, 5 Serie A titles, the last one at Inter last year, and also successful Italian team manager. Then he comes to Chelsea. He wins the Premier League and the FA Cup, falls out with the bosses at Chelsea, but a really outstanding coach and a clever, intelligent man as well. You can tell from his interviews.
Yeah, has a great record. He was also a very fine player, Eamon, who won lots of trophies as well, particularly with Juventus. He's his own man. He won't be pushed around by owners and things like that. And in fact, after winning the title at Inter Milan, I think he had his set sights on building a team to go close in the Champions League. But when he wasn't backed, he walked out. And John could be right. If he doesn't get players that he wants at the end of this season to improve the team, to give him a chance to challenge for the title, I think he might be walking as well.
Right. John and Liam, I'd like to talk to both of you for a moment about Harry Kane. Before the game on Saturday, John, Harry had only scored 7 goals this year. They were saying it's a post-Euro hangover. 7 goals in 22 games obviously isn't a great return, but if you're not in a good side, what can you do? He's a tremendous player, John, and he showed his full range of ability on Saturday. I thought that he 2 assists, 1 assist, 2 goals, and his distribution of the ball and his leadership of the team from centre forward, dropping deep, was really amazing. He is really just about a great player now, isn't he?
I think he is, Eamon. I think he was last year. And I think the City situation, saga at the start of the season really put him off, Eamon.
Yes.
It was a terrible, difficult thing to go through.
Yes.
Looked like you were going, then you weren't going, then you're back at the club, then there's a row with the chairman of the club. You can't start the season as brilliantly as you would want to under those circumstances. And on his goal scoring record, I think his record in the Premiership is not good. But in all the other matches, the European matches and that, he's still scored quite a lot of goals. But anyway, that's by the way in what you're talking about. Absolutely right. I think he's very, very near greatness.
Yes.
I think if he was playing in a really top team, or if Spurs get to be one of the top teams, his skill, he can come deep, he can make goals, he score goals. I thought he was brilliant, him and Son particularly, with Harry Kane, particularly Harry Kane. I think he was absolutely brilliant. He's scoring 2 goals, he's making this, he's making that.
Yeah.
And having had the start of the season, I think he loves Conte.
Yes.
I see him making remarks in the paper, Eamon, that this manager has to be backed and all that. They'd be made for each other. A great player and a great manager. They know what's available, what isn't available, if they're allowed to do their stuff. But I think he's top notch. I think his attitude is good. I think what he had to go through at the start of the season was very, very difficult situation to do. When you're dealing with Daniel Levy in the situation, it's very hard to beat him. And he didn't beat him, but I think it took a lot out of him.
Yes.
That he looked like he was going, he wasn't going. And I think he's coming back now with Conte there. He's coming back to his best. And I think he's very, very near greatness.
Yeah, Liam, we know, particularly in England, they tend to confer greatness on almost anybody, particularly if it's an English-born player. But Harry Kane, as John has said, I would agree with John. I think he is close to being, you could regard him as a great player, a great leader, a player who's improved throughout his career. And if he was at a top team, which he deserves to be, I think we're looking at one of the greats.
Yeah, certainly one of the Spurs greats, without any doubt. The goal-scoring record alone would make him that. I don't think he's really done it at an international level, Eamon, to be quite honest. Right. I thought he had a disappointing Euros.
Yeah.
Maybe England were a little bit too negative, and it didn't play to his strengths, but I thought he was poor in most of that competition. I think the stuff with Levy and not getting the move he wants, I think that definitely had an impact on his form.
He thought he had a gentleman's agreement with Levy, he said.
Well, that's what the story
is. Problem,
yeah, they thought they had to shake hands. He didn't have it in writing, Eamon. You know, just shows you need everything in writing.
You need two gentlemen as well.
I agree with John. I agree with John that Conte is the kind of manager that Kane would appreciate. He's a leader. Conte, he's strong. He's authoritative. Whereas when they had the Portuguese manager early on in the season, he kind of looked like a lame duck, didn't he? And it wasn't going to happen for him, you know, with Levy and Levy's strength. You really need a strong manager to make the Spurs team competitive. And that result there the other day, and with Kane coming back to form, they'll be looking at the table as well, Eamon. I know they're probably sitting 7th or 8th, but they'll be looking at the table saying, we can finish 4th here, you know. So.
Yeah, well, they've got 3 games in hand of Manchester United, and they're 7 points behind. Now, that's not insurmountable. And they're the same number of games played as Arsenal, and they're only 3 points behind. So that makes Thursday night a humdinger, Liam, doesn't it?
Well, it's Arsenal Wolves Thursday night. So, but I
thought you said Tottenham Arsenal.
It was a slip of the tongue. It's Arsenal Wolves, Eamon, on Thursday night.
Well, it's still a big game.
Arsenal Spurs are coming up soon. I think it's probably within 2 or 3 games, and Arsenal have got to go to White Hart Lane. So it's all to play for. It's all to play for across the board in the Premiership this year. The people running the Premier League must be so chuffed, you know, and. Let's face it, it is a great league, isn't it? You know, you just don't know. You just don't know what's going to happen from week to week. You know, we're talking about Man City, Spurs. Spurs on a losing run of 3 can go to Man City and play like they did and beat them. You know, yes. I think that tells you everything about the league we're watching.
It does, and a golden age with all the best coaches and most of the best players in the world there. I just remind you, Liam, in passing, I noted I laughed when I looked at the papers this morning. Your old friend Aubameyang scored a hat-trick for Barcelona last night, but that's another conversation.
Well, he can score goals.
Yeah.
That's one thing he can do.
Yeah. Okay, John, a final point, and to both of you, really. Liam mentioned Luis Diaz, Liverpool's signing that they pipped Spurs to get, right? They got him for Porto. His release clause was 37.5 million. Now, Liverpool looked absolutely... They rested the 2 fullbacks. They played Diaz up front with Mane and Salah. They rested quite a few players. They were 1-0 down after an hour against Norwich, but they turned it on in a big way, and Diaz got his first goal. He looks an absolute steal, John, for that kind of money. And that must have driven Antonio Conte mad. Here you got a steal. You got Diaz, a real seriously good player, and Liverpool nip in and nick him away. Someone is doing their homework at Liverpool, John, and they're doing it really well.
Well, their signings over the years have been very good, Eamon. But as you say with this lad, I've only seen him once. He looks very, very, very good.
He is.
See more of him. But you know, to be able to do that, Eamon, and for Liverpool's sake, it's great. For Spurs' sake, it's a total disaster, really.
Yes,
because you can imagine the Spurs man trying to get him for a bit less than they're asking and all that carry on.
Or maybe arguing over terms.
Instead of getting a player like Liverpool have steamed in and the last minute gave him what he wants. And Cage could come to terms with him. If you're going to do it. And I think that's what will drive Conte mad. But from Liverpool's point of view, of course, with the players that they have, there's nothing better than getting another player in who's very good.
Yeah.
Like they did with a lad from Wolves who scored all the who scored all the goals for them. Like they had Firmino at that stage. You think, well, what are they getting him for? But you can't sign too many really good players, Eamon, in coming into a successful situation. Anyway, that's the way, if you look at the great teams over the years, that's what they've done.
Yep.
They've bought players before they needed them, really needed them. And that's what Liverpool are doing at the moment. And then they have, now they can rest the players for matches like the game on Saturday and still go on and win. Eamon.
Yeah,
that's the way to run a club, and that's what they're doing extremely well, Liverpool.
And just to pick up on what Liam said, John, my own feeling is very strongly with Liam. I think the Premier League now is amazing. I think the quality of the managers in the league, coaches, Klopp, Thomas Tuchel, Guardiola, Conte. I also think the best players in the world, nearly all of them, or most of them, are playing in the Premier League, and it's so competitive. It's a very exciting league, John, at the moment.
Yeah, it is. Eamon, the Premier League have the money.
Yeah, absolutely. The money, the players and the coaches follow the money. I've no question.
They track that, of course. Like if you go back years ago, Italy had the most money than anybody else.
Yep.
Years ago. I mean, you go back a very, very long time ago. John Giles, who was a great player and playing for Leeds, went to Italy, and the top players, some of the Jimmy Greaves didn't want to stay there.
Liam Brady.
They could play the top players.
Liam
Brady. Yes, Liam was one of them.
Yeah.
So they could afford to buy the top players.
Yeah.
Italy.
Yeah.
And Spain, but especially Italy. Now the boot's on the other foot as far as the Premiership is concerned. Premiership have the money. Look at all the foreign players in Italy at the moment, David. In Liverpool alone, and all the money's there. So that's what attracts them, and that's what's making it such a great league.
Okay,
Brilliant league.
Just a final point, Liam, of the Inter team that played, of the Inter squad that faced up to Liverpool last week, 15 of them were in their 30s, which is an amazing statistic when you think about it. Dzeko and guys like that, well past their best. Now, Inter is a great club with a great history, but it is rather sad, isn't it?
Yeah, but as John says, the money generated by the Premier League has made that the place to play. Every team's kicking off the Premier League is probably guaranteed 150 million before the season even starts.
Yeah.
The Italian teams are no longer in that position. All the so-called benefactors have all kind of pulled out of it, and far too much money was spent on agents and things like that, and all the clubs have ended up really weak financially compared to what you can do in the Premier League. And it's the same probably in Spain as well, Eamon, and Germany.
Yes.
They can't match what's going on in the Premier League, but we're lucky. We've got it.
We've got it. And just a final point to say that the winner of Serie A this year in Italy will get 100 million. The bottom team in the Premier League will get 130 million. And that about sums it all up. I'm very grateful to John Giles and Liam Brady for joining us this morning. It is the greatest league in the world, and we get so much pleasure and enjoyment, as we know you do,